Setting up meeting to go live. Should be on. Now.
Okay, yes. I see us. Perfect. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm going to give a little bit of a chance for others to join in. We are, can you post the link on the comment page? Okay, got it. Perfect. Okay. Just want to make sure that everyone has, we also have a Facebook page that is called the Healers Roundtable, also, where if you happen to have missed the previous courses on trauma that was last weekend, you could go through Facebook and actually watch them so you could catch up if you've missed any of them. And I highly recommend it. We had so many great guest speakers in the last one. It was about understanding trauma. And this weekend, it's about steps on healing your trauma. So we're going to continue talking a little bit more about it, but also steps on how to start that healing process. And then the following weekend, it's about learning more about the effects of trauma on you physically, mentally, and emotionally. That will be the next weekend. And the whole point of these little courses is just to really help you digest and process any trauma that you might be going through that has arisen because of COVID. There's so many things going on right now, stress levels that are causing old, new trauma to just come up afloat. And so let me just talk a little bit about the schedule. So again, right now we're doing a welcoming. We're going to do a quick little meditation before introducing our guest speaker. And this will just help us to remind our body that it is in a safe space, that, you know, everything that we talk about or anything that might be triggered, you're in a safe space and you're okay. So we're going to do a little meditation to make sure to remind our bodies that. And then from 8:15 to 8:45, we have our guest speaker. And then from 8:45 to 9, we do like a little conclusion and we transition off of Facebook Live into the private Zoom session where the participants via Zoom will be able to ask questions, get answers, get some tips, tools, suggestions, and anything that you might be going through. Again, this is a safe space. If you want to talk about it, that's up to you. If you don't want to talk about it and just give us a vague bullet point, like this is what I'm dealing with, any suggestions, that's fine too. Okay. I just want everyone to understand that this is a safe space. And then just a little bit about us. My name is Rebecca and my husband.
JB Atkins, just dealing with a little technical stuff over here.
Okay. And together we are Dual Dragons. We are holistic wellness consultants. We're also known as the Muscle Whispers. And the reason they call us that is because we really talk to the muscle. The muscle holds muscle memory. So if your muscles have been through any traumatic event, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, anything, any kind of trauma, your muscle holds that memory of that trauma. And so when we work on the body, not only are we dealing with all those trigger points and those muscles that are physically probably expressing pain because it's trying to find a way to deal with that trauma, we also pull out from that muscle whatever story my husband channels. I do energy work. I'm an empath. So I'll start feeling more things and he starts getting visuals and messages. So as we're working together on our clients, not only are we giving them physical relief, we're also giving them emotional relief and a way to be able to emotionally detox any negative emotions within their body. and mentally also help them change their mindset, not change it for them, but have them be able to change it for themselves, to be able to change that perception of whatever is causing that trauma to continue. And so those are the three elements we work on our clients. And so again, if there's something that you would like to ask us, besides off of this, you could email us, jbr@dualdragons.com. You could also look through our website, dualdragons.com, and our number is there also. And that number is our business number, so you could text or call that number. Okay. So it is getting to 8:05. So what I want to do now is I really want everyone to take this time to get comfortable in your seat. If you're in your seat, get comfortable. If you happen to be off your screen is off and you can lay down, go for it. So just kind of like arms extended outwards, legs and feet flat on the floor. And I want you to make sure to take 3 deep belly breaths. What I mean by that is if you place a hand on your heart and a hand on your belly, when you take that deep breath, only your belly should be extending outwards on the deep breath. So let's take our first one. Second deep breath. I want you all to take a nice deep breath and hold it for 10 seconds. Last deep breath, just naturally a nice deep inhale and exhale. Now I just want you to breathe, continue breathing those nice deep belly breaths. And we're going to do a body scan now. In this body scan, as you're scanning your way up, starting at the feet, notice any pain, anything that might come up, a visual, maybe a message that you hear. Just really tune into your body right now. Become one with your body and just feel it, hear it, see it. Starting at your feet, working its way up to your ankles. Now continue scanning from your ankle going up to the knees. From your knees up to your hip. Pay attention to your hip now. And as you are there, start at the tailbone now. And we're going to slowly go up the tailbone and start feeling each vertebrae along the spine. Just go up, almost like if you were climbing up your spine. Just go up, 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 up. When you get right at the bottom of your neck, this time go outwards to your collarbones, toward your shoulders. From your shoulders down to your elbows. From your elbows down to your wrists. then all the way out through your fingertips. Move your fingers a little bit. From your fingertips, move back up the wrist, back up the elbow, up to the shoulders, up through the collarbone, back to the base of our neck, and slowly make your way up your neck. Now to the jaw. Feel your jaw. And from your jaw, go up towards the skull. And go ahead and feel how your skull feels. Again, take a deep belly breath. Take some mental notes for yourself. Areas that you felt a little discomfort possibly, or maybe some beautiful energy. Was there any images that you came across? Anything that got triggered within your body? Make a mental note. Any sensations or visuals that you get, write them down. Now slowly make your way back. And take those little notes, those notes of that body scan that we just did. Those are very important because your body speaks to you every day and lets you know, hey, I need attention here. You could feel it every morning you get up. So one of the tools that I'm offering, that I've offered last weekend, is when you do this every morning when you get up. Don't just get up and start going and walking and moving because your body's not ready yet. You really need to get in the habit, just like our pets, our cats, our dogs. What's the first thing they do when they get up? They stretch. And you see them take their time. And it's like, and then they eventually start walking towards you, and it's like, feed me. They're so good at asking what they need. But that's the same thing I want you to do for yourself. Do those stretches in bed and slowly sit up. And when you sit up on the edge of your bed is when I want you to practice that body scan. Do that body scan of yourself. What feels off? What feels good? Notice those moments where, oh wow, my hip finally feels better. You know, maybe you're doing something right. Maybe there's a certain exercise. Pay attention to the exercises that feel good for you, and those are the ones you want to do. And then whatever doesn't feel well, if you can't address it at that moment, give it some love. Say, my shoulder. Oh, okay, I'm aware now, shoulder. Thank you for letting me know you're not happy with me today. I will make sure to take care of you soon. And you'll be amazed just by doing that simple little pat, how your day turns around. And that's about changing your mindset, starting your day right, feeling good with yourself, and start that flow of your day in a much smoother way than just getting up fast and trying to run and get things done. And then it just feels like your day just snowballed to something else negative that you did not want. So with that,
Let me just give you the 4-step process before we introduce our wonderful guests.
and we'll do that at the end. At
Okay.
the end. Okay. So I want to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker. Her name is Joanna Trella. Trella. Do you see her, JB?
Yes, she's on.
Okay.
Trella.
Trella. There you go. I just want to make sure. And she is Miss Woman of West Coast, United States, California, creator and Excel. I like that, and exhale. Like, just get it out. I
We
like
say it so many times a day as teachers. It's a nice pattern to be with us.
And she is the author of Made with Love, which is a book that just came out. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's called 22 Days of Self-Love and Awareness, a manuscript for healing. Now, stay on Zoom because there's something we're gonna be offering. So you want to make sure to stick around in Zoom for the next hour and if you're on Facebook Live, make sure to join in via Zoom because you could only get this if you're on our Zoom, okay? So she is selling the books, but stay tuned. And they are available through Amazon. All her proceeds go through Cycles of Healing of IamLove.org, which is a fantastic organization. So if you don't stay via Zoom, make sure to look into this, but stay via Zoom because there'll be some good surprises. So with that, I want to go ahead and pass the microphone to Joanna so she could share a little bit about her story and about her book that we'll be learning more about also in our private session. Okay.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for that warm welcome and that really great mindful meditation this morning. It really was what I needed to get me grounded and just centered. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I walk in the light most of my days, and I do so because it's a lot brighter than the darkness. And I share that because anyone that has spent time in the darkness knows it can be filled with creepy crawlers and really get us to wiggle with some energy that doesn't feel in alignment with us. And I always refer to that darkness in my life as the abusive cycle. I was a child of a generation of abuse. And what I mean by that is abuse is an energetic cycle that can be passed energetically from one generation to the next. And, I share this because it's not about blame or shame, for, whoever is involved or part of that cycle, but rather in great compassion, because we really learn and we adapt and we adjust to the things that we're most exposed to. So when we're exposed to a lot of good vibrations, our energy excels and expands. And when we are exposed to a lot of low vibrations, we can smize and shrink. And in a household that, always gratified themselves by saying that it was when they were yelling at you and criticizing you that they were sharing their love the most. That was how I really originated with how love felt, was when someone was yelling at me and criticizing me. And so as I grew up and left my childhood and became an adult, it was really unusual for me to be in relationships that were not yelling and critical. And so I found myself just entangled a little bit more with more low vibrational energy exchanges and things that just didn't feel good. And the little girl in me continued to fight back in this cycle. And she found herself in relationships that were emotionally unavailable, relationships that were very dominating, relationships that were very egocentric, relationships that were very filled with narcissistic and sociopathic energies that didn't serve me. And not only didn't they serve me, but because they were giving me this reflection, I was then adapting that behavior and reflecting it back. And when I, would sit within my own space, there was nothing in me that felt good about that. I always knew that this was not in alignment. And even though that was what I knew that I needed to find a different way, and I needed to learn a different way, because the things that I wanted out of my life were not in reach in this energy exchange. So lo and behold, I found yoga, or should I say it found me. And it was in those moments spent in the light, dwelling within my own self and really observing myself and studying how things made me feel. And, just kind of allowing myself to fall apart. Right. And that was something that was so polar opposite of what that generational abusive cycle had taught me, because that cycle told me to hold tight, control strong, and dominate so that nothing changes or leaves that space of control. And what I was learning through yoga was let go, melt away, fall apart, feel it, and be with it. Right. So it was very different than what I had learned, but yet every moment I was sharing in the light, spending time discovering myself and getting to know how I felt, and not shying away from those feelings, but rather feeling them and understanding what the root source was, where it was connected, and how to release those attachments. Did I realize that this might be a little more time consuming, and this might come with a lot more feels, but it feels right for me. And every step of the way that I spent in the light with my own personal practice of yoga and incorporating more than just the asana, but the philosophy and the study of myself and the unity taking me home within my own personal heart, gave me more and more discoveries on how I wasn't made to be abusive and controlling and dominating and aggressive. I was actually made with love, and I was made to be soft and gentle and forgiving and restorative. And that energy was ascending me. I was noticing that within this energy field, I wasn't small. I was rather bigger than ever. And what I was attracting in that space wasn't generational abusers. It was people that were also receiving the energy of the light and healing and discovering themselves too. And from that space, we collectively were expanding and uplifting each other. Well, that really got my attention. And I started to write a lot. And over the course of the last 10 years, I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And I was really watching some of the things that I was journaling and noticing the change and how spending time in this light, in this space of attunement where I could self-discover and dwell within my own space of love, I realized that that was a unique thing. And I realized that nobody, not you or me, loves the same, because we're all so different. And as we experience our different lives and travel on these different paths, when we enter a space in love, we can then sort of collect this energy and fill our vortex with more love that is infectious in a really, really positive way, and creates the things in our life that we feel good about, that we are excited to share, and that heal us. And I learned more than anything that it's in that healing that we rise and ascend and become the light and the energy and the beings that we feel so good about being. So I put this travel agenda that I've been on for the last decade or so into a really sweet container called Made with Love. And in this container, it gives an awesome opportunity to create a new cycle, a cycle that feeds healing, a cycle that gives each person that experiences it an opportunity to dive in deep to themselves and discover different modalities of contemplation that lead you to a place of really loving yourself and doing things for yourself that create a vulnerability and an intimacy that only you can discover by being truthful and sultry and passionate within you. And then to take that energy that you are sort of veiling, of revealing within yourself, and share it and see the results when you share that energy with other people and how that vibration connects and what happens from that space of discovery with another. And it's through those principles that we create a new cycle, a cycle of healing that feels good and that gives us what we need to stay grounded, what we need to clear out each day, and what we need to ascend into places that take us into new spaces within our journey that feel better and better and better. And as we all know, when we feel good, we feel good. And the more we feel good, the more we're rising, right? The more we're creating more of that feel good moments. So in 22 days, we go through 11 principles twice. The first 11 days, we really take a dive into self-discovery and attuning to what some of those things that feel good are. And then we take a nice pause for reflection right in the middle. And then we repeat that cycle to kind of integrate that pattern into our life cycle. And by the end of the 22 days, you really feel like this is something that's not just, going to be gone in 22 days, but rather something that can be integrated within the next 22 and the next 22 that just follow the cycle of our life and can go on forever and ever, and just continue to create that really good feedback within and without. And it's something that you can take a pause from when needed and return to when needed as well. But a cycle of love that feeds healing for times in which we need to just kind of check in with ourselves. And when those triggers come up, we've got some tools that we can go to that will immediately create that memory within our chemistry and release some biofeedback that reminds us, this helps us get back on track and stay in a good place of love. So I encourage everyone to join me in 22 days. We're starting a journey today, and all is welcome to join me as we move through 22 days of self-love and self-awareness, and recreate our stories and write our own manuscript for healing that resonates within our own being each and every day.
Joanna, can you share a little bit about how this book came about? Because I know you touched a little bit about it, like you were journaling in your own healing process.
Absolutely. There were many moments in my life that just traumatized me. As a young girl, I was molested by a babysitter, and I never faced any of that violation. Rather, I tucked it in and repressed it. And it came out in about 5-year increments of my life in flashes of very traumatic nightmares. And I never really understood fully what they were because I wasn't facing them. I was repressing it and then kind of bulldozing through that energy with just more controlling and aggressive behaviors right in my life. And I was young at the time. And that's a really monumental kind of poignant place to kind of hold space with. And I'll put that over here because now flash forward into my late teens, young 20s. And I was a young girl trying to figure out, how to make a life for myself. And I ended up marrying very young to a man that was a good friend, but very emotionally unavailable. And I share that part with you because for me, after having so much energy that I bullnosed through, being with someone that was emotionally unavailable was safe. It was safe because then I could continue to control those emotions and never have to unleash them as long as I was with someone energetically that didn't need them. Does that make sense? See, these are patterns that we do when we're in a cycle. right? And so at the time, that cycle of abuse was very self-inflicted. And when I took myself as far as I can and I became a mom, which was a wonderful awakening for me, not once, but 4 times. And all 4 times, those children, they shook me and they opened my eyes and attuned me a little more and let me see through their lenses how to look at life. And each time I was attuned as a mother, I woke up into a space of, we can't ignore some of that stuff back there. We can't be emotionally unavailable. We can't, right? I mean, we could have, but wow, when I was more attentive to my emotions rather than carrying them on the weight of my shoulders, I was a better mom. I was more present. I was more alive, right? So it came to a halt in my life in my mid-30s, right now. And I share these time pockets because you can see the swell of time in between each delivery of awakening and what they offered me. And in my mid-30s, I decided to brave a divorce. Now, I'm not an advocate for divorce, but for me, that was a moment of awakening I'll never forget, because I had to learn how to take care of myself independently. I didn't have a partner to lean on to feed that codependence anymore and enable that emotional detachment. And I was responsible for 4 children all by myself. And those emotional reckonings, right, and the stress and the pressure were just peaking and poking at me constantly and breaking down little layers in me that were giving me massive force and forge to take a look at how I felt and how I was behaving in my life, because some of the results I was having weren't working out for me very well. So as I found my way into the pockets of yoga and slipped deeper and deeper into some of my meditations and my practices, I was becoming a teacher at the time. And I was starting to feel things that were so deep and so deeply rooted in me that it wasn't just coming out through my heart and my emotions, it was coming out physically. I was physically feeling pain. I was physically feeling the disturbance in my overall being. It was affecting my internal health, my hormones, right? It was affecting how I appeared. I was undeniably aware that something was going on that I needed to pay attention to, but didn't know how. So, as we all know, God gives us another opportunity to learn. And here I am, a single mom, and I journeyed into a relationship with a man that little did I know was going to shatter me, but in all of the worst and the best possible ways. And in this 5-year relationship, just 5 years of life, I dealt with more infidelity and disturbances to my own personal space of control, right? Now go back, I was someone that was part of generational abuse. So I was very addicted to controlling things, dominating things, and creating things that I could control. Not creating things where I could feel freedom and limitless, but creating things that I can control. So now being in a relationship with someone that was still, again, unemotionally available because he was not faithful, right? But he wasn't healthy. Anytime someone was unfaithful, it's about them. It's their inability to give, right? To give and receive. And so I had to see that reflection. And that reflection created such a disturbance in me that we started to physically interact. And that physical disturbance became the abuse cycle that changed my life forever. I had confronted him about abuse. Now think about that. I had confronted him about it versus just knowing this is not a healthy relationship. I should detach and leave. I didn't have the healthy skill set to do those skill sets that are needed to walk away from something that wasn't serving me. So it was in those broken moments of physical altercations where someone was physically hurting me that I had to just wake up and realize this hurts physically. And I'm just going to sit with that. It took being physically hurt to wake up and say, ouch, this hurts. Because all of the verbal abuse, all of the betrayal, that hadn't penetrated. That's how anchored in that generational abuse was inside of me on cellular levels. Does that make sense? Okay. So here's where our children play a really big role in our awakenings. About 1.5 years after I was able to get myself out of that relationship, a lot of therapy, a lot of yoga, a lot of self-love and self-healing, my daughter had come to me because she had finally felt safe. And she had told me that this man that had been hurting me for all these years had raped her. Sit with that. So for me, something I wasn't able to do for myself at the time, I could do for my daughter. It took being able to see through her lens and to feel that from her, for me to have such an epiphany and such an awakening about how, if I don't do something about this cycle, it's going to continue to channel and resonate through my children and their children and their children. So the pain from my daughter's suffering moved through me so tremendously, it evoked an awakening that stopped a cycle within me and created the discovery of what 22 days of self-love and awareness provides. And what you read through those 22 days are the different principles that I incorporate in my life, not just then, but every day. And, you know, even though this trauma has happened to me about 6 years ago now, it still comes up. It's still there. It still wants to knock on my door and remind me of the pain, remind me of the cycle I came from. But the beauty of Made with Love is I now have a toolbox that's prepared for it. So when I have those triggers, body, mind, and sometimes soul, and they come in and they try to invade me with old energy, old patterns, I now can take something out of my toolbox to combat that, to leverage it, to balance it, and to remind me just simply by being in it that today we're okay. And it's because of the choices we're making today. We have the energy to facilitate abuse and transmute it into something that moves from pain into a life with purpose and healing. And I have nothing but gratitude for the blessing that this has not only given myself, but shared and transformed and radiated and reflected and influenced my daughter and my 3 other children, and, you know, the love of my life now, and the friends and the people that I have relationships with now.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to make sure everyone understood where this book was coming from, because that's why I kind of, got that connection right away when I when I first heard about your book, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. This is perfect because this is what I'm talking about, how to heal trauma. But I didn't know the backstory until recently when I watched your videos. And when I watched your videos, that's when it hit me like, oh, wow, like this is powerful. If this is something powerful to share, and hopefully all of us could start this challenge and really just digging in, like you say, deep within yourself to really be able to break the cycle. More than anything, break those cycles so they don't get passed down. That's, to me, that's the biggest thing we can do for our next generations, being able to break those cycles for them. That doesn't mean that they're not going to have their own experiences. That's the thing about life. We all have some form of trauma, but being able to give them those tools now when those situations do arise gives me that sense of hope and faith that they'll be able to get through it much easier, with ease and joy, and just be able to come out of it and say, okay, I got through that. I learned from it, and now I'm going to use it as fuel to do what I need to do next on my path.
Absolutely. And, when we are conditioned to
Mhm.
behavior, we don't even realize that there's anything wrong with it until we know something new.
Exactly.
And, part of the most, the biggest part of my story is that not necessarily the worst part,
Mhm.
right? And the worst part was what was the last thing that happened before I actually got into action of doing something different,
Mhm.
right? But the biggest part of my story was I was so conditioned from childhood that I didn't necessarily, now I know it sounds silly to know that love feels like love. We assume that we all know what love feels like. We assume that we all think love feels the same way. We assume that when we say, I love you, or what does it feel like to be loved, that means the same for everyone. And what we all discover in this journey is what love means to ourselves and why. And what I learned in my journey is that love didn't feel good to me. I wasn't conditioned that way. I was more comfortable in a painful relationship than I was in a loving relationship, because that's what I was conditioned to. And so I had to see that. I had to feel it, and I had to move through it and learn and teach myself and condition a new behavior.
Yes.
And that's where the 22 days is really important, because it takes time to integrate new patterns. It takes time to really observe ourselves and get in the habit of observing ourselves and listening to ourselves, right? It's hard enough sometimes to observe and listen to somebody else, let alone ourselves. And so it's through, right? Right. And so it's through that practice that we really set ourselves free. However, it's not a walk in the park, right? It's not like we decide, okay, I'm just going to observe myself and I'm just going to listen and I'm going to hear it all and change everything. We're good. It takes time, and it takes a lot of self-compassion, because we do get triggered and we do get a lot of opportunity to practice. And you know how we get to practice? By being confronted with old energy, with old patterns, with old stuff. That stuff kind of comes back to remind us, like, I'm here and I'm your nemesis. I'm here to mess with you today. How are you going to handle it? Right? And it's our choice as healers to use our tools.
Yes.
And to use them and be like, dun, dun, I'm here and I'm made with love. You can't get me today. And I've got a few tools in my pocket and I'm going to pull them out and There you go. And instead of fighting with hate and fighting with anger and fighting with blame and fighting with shame, fight with love.
Yeah.
You fight with surrender. You fight with peace. You fight with compassion. And you realize that the fight becomes less and less and less a struggle, and more and more and more opportunities to receive
Yes.
and to expand with other people in the light. And it's not a perfect world we get to live in every day. There's a lot of people at different places in their journey.
Yes.
And we are all entering space with each other with different intentions. And we don't necessarily know what each other's intentions are all the time. And the more that we understand that, the more we can practice staying in our own personal alignment. Because when we do, we're less likely to take things personal, need to control, or need to fight, for lack of better words, for anything. We realize within our own peace of mind that we're good. Good. And we're more than enough. And wherever we are in our journey is right where we need to be. And if we're showing up in our truth and we're there to be translucent, that intention will gift us the beauty and the time of now and the co-creation with others. And there's that key word, co-creation, rather than fight. And that's the beauty of Made with Love. When you realize that you're made with love and you're gifted with an abundance of divine interventions to support you so that you retain happiness and freedom. You don't have to worry about hiding or controlling or dominating. You can feel safe being who you are authentically, generously, and you get to receive. You don't have to give all the time. You can receive as much as you give. And knowing that has made all the difference in my life. And I now see the results of being in relationships that are healthy, relationships that have healthy boundaries, you know, to be able to be alone with myself and enjoy the time I share with me, to have more authentic interactions with my children and my work and my clients. And the things that I do now are created from a place of peace, love, and the desire to create connection more deeply with myself and all other beings.
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Again, I wanted to put your information up for anyone that's in. And then just a little breakdown of conclusion before we go into private Zoom. You know, last weekend we shared our 4 steps. We had 2 other guest speakers. Patty shared her 3 steps, and Cece shared 9 steps. So there's different ways of going about it, but whatever works, I always say what works best for you, do it. And so I'm just going to share about how we break down trauma is by bringing awareness. And like, you know, Joanne said it too, you know, that awareness, that moment where you just see it and you're just like, whoa. And like in this picture, you're finally seeing the beast in front of you. You know, and sometimes that beast is just ourselves. If you notice, it's a reflection of this little cat seeing the beast. You know, so it's just being able to break it down, that awareness of like, okay, I'm aware now. How do I break this down? How do I process this? How do I deal with it? Interview it. Getting a breakthrough through interviewing your own process. What is this really about? Let me sit down and think about it. When did this first start? And going back to interview your inner child is the best way. Going back to that moment where you were the happiest as a child before any trauma was set into your mind or your purity or your innocence. Going back to that innocence gives you those breakthroughs of how do I get back to that point of my life? Being that child that was so free, imaginative, creative, with no limits, with no conditions, with no, ways to not deal with themselves. Because when we were children, we didn't care. We would play and just break down walls if we had to. We were like, what invisible. That's the word. When I was a little girl, I felt invisible, but at the same time, very powerful because I was able to create and imagine this beautiful playtime that I would just imagine myself here or there, conquering this or doing that. And so interview that child, and that child will give you the breakthroughs you need to then find that forgiveness within yourself. And I'm talking about forgiving yourself of holding on to that so tight, forgiving yourself for putting yourself in those situations that were not healthy for you, forgiving yourself for not loving yourself enough. By giving yourself that forgiveness, it brings awakening of now you could finally see yourself, that vulnerable self, forgive it because it's in the long end, even though as vulnerable it could be, it's very powerful to be vulnerable. And then last, integrating that. And this is what we call finding self-love. And that's where this book is going to come into play of finding those integrations within ourselves to find that self-love. And finding self-love, like I said, is endless. It's just like education. It's endless. The more you learn, the more you get to be aware, the more you get to see beyond these four walls. So integration, I take it highly like education. You have to do it every day. You have to find new tools. You have to see what else needs to be digged up to be able to replenish that beautiful soil within your body and to be able to continue growing that beautiful garden within yourself. So that's what I call finding self-love. And with that, I want to end it with this page again. I like to show these numbers because in case you are going through anything that needs immediate attention, please don't hesitate to call these numbers. Don't hesitate to reach out to any of us that have been presenting. We have the mental health hotline here, National Domestic Violence Hotline, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and also our National Sexual Assault Hotline. Again, within your own community, you could find services and help. But I really want to educate everyone of finding that help you need, that team you need. It's going to take more than one person. That team you need to become your group to help you through anything. It's better to do it in a group than alone. Alone is a very lonely road. But when you have a great team, a great group of people that surrounds you to uplift you, that's the best recipe for success. Okay. So with that, let me stop share. Okay. So we will be going into our private Zoom. Is there anything you want to add, my husband?
No, I was just going to close it out and say we'll start the private Zoom early. So thank you everyone on Facebook for tuning in. If you're watching this after replay, there's no private Zoom for you, obviously. But those who are present and on live, just join us, please. And remember to stay healthy and breathe intentionally. And the link should be in the comments below.
Yes.